Hello, everybody, and welcome to Adventures in History. I'm here. It's a good day. The weather is finally calming down a little bit. Um, I hope things are well in your world. We are still in the process of kind of not necessarily rerunning, but revisiting some previous topics as an attempt at filling in gaps for the YouTube stream. Not YouTube stream, the YouTube channel. We'll have to say. A little bit scatterbrained. Hopefully that will rectify itself as we move through the course of the discussion today. Otherwise, this is going to be really fun. Just realized that I don't even have my notes pulled up, but that's okay, because this is one of my kind of pet areas. I really like the Assyrians. I particularly appreciate this kind of chunk of Assyrian history, which is their kind of rise to greatness after the catastrophic collapse of the Bronze Age. We're going to reestablish ourselves with lots of expansion, lots of conquering, pretty cool artwork. So we're going to get to look at all this stuff. Hopefully, we'll get through this in what might be considered a fair amount of time. I am quite likely to ramble about this stuff because, again, kind of like it. So, what's up to everybody? Matt is here. DCI Banks is here. Sohn is here. What's up? Fall Machine, welcome everybody. Hope that everybody is doing well. So, normally I would spend about 10 minutes at the beginning of a stream kind of chatting so as to wait for everybody else to show up. But there is a lot of stuff to go through here tonight, so I don't think I'm going to give the standard chit chat. I think it would be best if we just kind of went right at it. And we're going to start with a dude named Adad Nirari. Specifically, he is Adad Nirari II. Lots of funny, weird names tonight for kings of Assyria, but this guy is the dude that really gets us started with the post-collapse resurgence of the Iron Age Assyrians. So, to briefly catch everybody up, if you've never heard of the collapse of the Bronze Age, there were really big empires, and in the span of about 150 years, the 5 largest empires on Earth all collapsed, and 3 of them basically didn't exist at that point. Assyria hung on, but it was a much reduced territory, and it was no longer really an empire. It was much more of a powerful city-state, and it stayed that way for about 400 years. Because the collapse of the Bronze Age was a rough period of time. Well, not 400 years. That's a little bit too generous. Probably about 300 years. We'll say it that way. But when we get to Adad Nirari, things start changing. And the Assyrians are going to start expanding again. And they're one of the first real empires to make a move coming out of the Iron Age, or coming out of the collapse of the Bronze Age and into the Iron Age. And because of that, they're going to be able to take advantage of a lot of the complacency of their neighbors. And Adad Nirari is going to start fighting. Of course, one of the kind of quintessential enemies of Assyria is Babylon, and Adad Nirari is going to fight against the Babylonians, also against the people that were the remnants of the Hittite Empire, and also push all the way over into the northern Levantine region over here and fight against a country called Aram Damascus, which is one of these small kingdoms that kind of popped up after the big empires fell apart. So this whole region right around in here was just full of little bitty kingdoms that might have one or two big cities, might have just city-state level size. They might be, like the Phoenicians, well, thank you, Claire. The Phoenicians were sort of a collective federation of city-states. So Aram Damascus sat right about here around where modern-day Damascus is and was one of these little kingdoms. But Assyria sits right over here on the Tigris River and was able, under Adad-Nirari II, to push back down into southern Mesopotamia and to expand up here into northern Mesopotamia and even a little bit over here into what is modern-day southeastern Turkey. This would have been where the Neo-Hittite cities were. They were not a kingdom at that point. They were a group of city-states who may or may not have even really been Hittites, because the Hittite Empire collapsed pretty firmly at the end of the Bronze Age. What's up, Silver? Good to see you. They start expanding and get that Adad bod, indeed. I hear you. Is the region Syria named after Assyria? It is, absolutely, Robin. That's a good call. And the ancient Assyrian Empire sat sort of right here in this northern Mesopotamia region, and if we put on our modern borders, this is where the modern-day country of Syria is. So we will see some maps later on that much more firmly nail down where the Assyrians are, and you'll be able to tell that a lot of this region was once under their control, but also a lot of the region that is in modern-day Iraq. Most of Mesopotamia, ancient Mesopotamia, is in modern-day Iraq. So there's that. Good question, though. So Adad-Nirari II starts expanding, does a lot of cool stuff, but the dude that really starts making the big waves, to the point where we're back on top, and we're not only just making cool stuff, we're also building like the really big monumental architecture again. We are once again capable of patronizing artists. This guy's name is Ashurnasirpal, which is everybody's favorite Ashurnasirpal the second. Ashurnasirpal is this guy. We see him here sitting on his throne, being fanned by attendants, holding a drinking vessel, wearing the very cool Assyrian-style beard and hair. This particular version of facial hair and hairstyle is very indicative of the Iron Age Assyrians, and you're going to see people with this style pretty frequently. So here we have him sitting in his power on his throne. Also really cool, down here you see that all of this is inscribed, just sort of telling about Ashurnasirpal and all the cool things that he did. But the fact that the Assyrians could produce something that looked like this when most other empires were not capable of doing so is really just a sort of a symbol of how powerful Assyria had become, and how much they're going to start like smacking the smackdown. Do they share a similar religion to the Babylonians? Similar, but not exact. So a lot of the early Mesopotamian gods, if we're going way, way back into the Neolithic era, so this would be like the very tail end of the Stone Age when we're transferring over into the Bronze Age, a lot of those city-states had a lot of the same sort of religious practice, but each city-state kind of had its own little patron deity. And it's not really until we start seeing expansive empires that start spreading out in the early and middle Bronze Age that you really start seeing an organized religious practice in Mesopotamia. The first people that did that weren't Assyrians or Babylonians. They were actually Akkadians, and we sometimes also refer to them as the Sumerians. But yeah, the basic religious sort of practice was very similar, even if they did not use the same names for the gods. It's a similar sort of situation, and we can't stretch this too far. This is just a basic metaphor. This is not necessarily a one-to-one comparison. But it's similar to a situation where if you go to Greece and Rome, they have different names for the same deity, right? Instead of Zeus in Greece, we might call him Jupiter in Rome. It's not that close, right? It's not a direct parallel to the Greek/Rome situation, but it's a similar kind of parallel where we are going to practice our faith roughly the same ways. We're going to have a lot of the same traditions. Right, because they're so close to each other, and they sort of take turns ruling Mesopotamia, where Babylon might be powerful and then it falls and Assyria takes over, but then Babylon might take back over, and back and forth like that. There's going to be some level of homogenous practice in the region, even if they have very different flavors. Now, if you were to ask someone from Assyria if they shared religious practices with someone from Babylon, they would tell you absolutely not. Of course, they believed that they had the only right gods and that the Babylonians weren't doing it the right way, and that in fact the Assyrians were the keepers of the original message, and that the Babylonians weren't even really Babylonians anymore, that they were either Kassites or later on in the Iron Age Chaldeans, which aren't Babylonians anyway. There's a lot of name calling here, right? Lots of what we might call sort of proto-nationalism. It's not really the same thing as what we would say is nationalism now. Kassites, is that what you're trying to get me to say? Kassites, like this. Kassites are a group of people that moved into the Babylonian region around the 1900s, 1800s BC, and end up taking over most of southern Mesopotamia under the guise of being Babylonians. And we actually have a lot of the Babylonian texts that were sacred to the Babylonians preserved, because when the Kassites took over, they wanted to make sure that everybody knew that they were actually legitimate Babylonians, and the way that they did that was by promulgating so much of the Babylonian literature by copying it over. They put a lot of emphasis on preserving traditional Babylonian heritage by making lots and lots and lots of copies. Are the Armenians a thing during the Assyrian time period? At this particular time period, the Armenians are not a thing. There is a group of people up there and in the region that is going to one day become Armenia, but they are another country called Urartu, and we'll talk about them extensively here in just a little bit, and I'll show you some pictures from their ancient capital city. But Ashurnashirpal is a really big, powerful guy, and he is going to oversee a large amount of expansion. He is king from 883 to 859 BC. He is going to take out lots and lots and lots of territory. He's going to beat up the Babylonians. He's going to conquer a lot of territory that moves out towards what we might call old traditional Assyrian territory here in northern Mesopotamia. He's going to defeat some of the Neo-Hittite cities and even conquer some of them. And he's going to move back over here and fight against the Aramaeans again. And Assyria is going to go from controlling an area right about here to pretty much controlling this whole area right here. And even as far over as the coast of the Mediterranean is going to be under his threat, even if he's not necessarily directly taking it over yet. But especially this move down here towards the south is also going to threaten Baghdad, not Baghdad, Babylon, which is not too far from where modern Baghdad is. And as a way to further suppress Babylonian independence or power growth, Ashurnashirpal is going to build a new capital city. And this is going to move from Ashur, which is where we get Assyria from, and he's going to move the capital southward towards a place that he calls Kalhu. And this is going to be a new capital. And by the way, the reason I'm talking to you all about this stuff is because if you ever have to cross the Bridge of Death, and the bridge keeper asks you, what is the capital of Assyria? The way to get out of that question is, under which Iron Age king? And then he probably will not know all of the different Iron Age kings, and he will therefore be tossed into the Gorge of Eternal Peril, and you will be safe to cross, right? So Ashur is a fair guess for the Bronze Age and the earliest part of the Iron Age, but Kalhu is another possible guess under Ashur-Nasirpal. It's like modern Christians, sort of. I would argue that the map looked much greener in those days. Yeah, so the modern map of Mesopotamia does not look nearly as green as it would have, and that is mostly because modern aquaculture and water engineering, hydroengineering, sorry, words. Water engineering, aqua engineering has stopped most of the flooding along the river. There are really big hydroelectric dams up here in Turkey on some of the tributaries that feed into the Tigris and the Euphrates. A lot of man-made reservoirs control flooding. Most of the flooding from the ancient world comes from these highlands right here, where seasonal rain and snow are going to dump into the headwaters and, of course, then flood down the length of the entire river. But that's what makes Mesopotamia the Fertile Crescent, right? These constant floods are going to bring in lots of nutrients to the soil, and this is, of course, going to make the area much more fertile. It's also fair to point out that it's a little bit hotter over there now than it used to be, and this area is much more arid than it used to be. So there's a lot of different reasons for this, both man-made and natural. What's up, Tuna? I saw that you came in early and I didn't say hello. Also, hey, Silver. I did say hey, Silver. Viper, what's up? And Moose is here. I thought you didn't pay the ferryman until he gets to the other side. Well, it depends on which version of the myth that you're looking at, but you should probably make sure that you've got your change in your pocket when you get there. Chocobo, what's going on? How's it going? Hope you're well. Claire, I saw you and said thank you, but I don't know if I said hello. Hello, Claire. Good to see you. I know. I'm just doing that thing where I explain jokes and they turn out to not be funny after I explain them. I guess I'm just way too blunt right now. I'm kind of sleepy, but I think we're doing okay. One of the things that gets pretty frequently accredited to our guy Ashur-Nasirpal is the development of this system of dealing with conquered peoples, right? So this is sort of like a 3-level system. If Assyria takes you over, right, the first level of this is tributary, right, where we will send our army over as Assyrians, beat you up, and then force you to agree to pay tribute to us. And we don't necessarily want to take all of your land, because even at this point in time, they understood that there was only a certain amount that they could manage to hold on to and do so effectively, because they're still expanding and they're still getting their sea legs back. So they can't just massively expand really quick and hope to hold all this territory, but they'll beat you up and make you pay tribute. And this is sort of step 1, right? Or level 1, if you will. And if you're a good tributary kingdom, you're probably going to be able to stay there for quite some time. Now, if you stop paying tribute, they're going to show back up with their army. And when they show back up with their army, they're going to kill your king. And when they kill your king, they're going to find somebody, usually from your country, but somebody that they're going to put on the throne. And then you're going to be a vassal, right? So you might have a local ruler that speaks your language and is from your culture, maybe even somebody from the royal family, but they're going to owe their position on that throne to the Assyrians. And if they make trouble, or if the country sort of still refuses to kind of toe the line the right way, well, then you just get straight up conquered. And this is not the first step in most of these situations. It's pretty far down the line. But you do see this increasing level of punishment for rebellion. This is kind of an interesting and is definitely a novel take on expansion and empire theory in the Iron Age, where you just kind of let people I don't know, pick their own destiny almost. Like, we're bigger than you and we're way scarier than you, but we don't necessarily have to hate you and we don't have to kill all of your people. If you make us, then we're gonna. But you don't have to make us. Obviously, here the Assyrians aren't being nice with all of this. They're still threatening people. This is still very coercive in nature. But it's not just, we're going to come in and destroy everything about you and level you down to the ground and then take over yet. That's definitely something that's going to happen not too far in the future. Because it turns out that eventually you just can't trust people to do even the basic things. So then you just have to squish them. Do we know anything about their style of warfare? Oh yeah. They were very heavily based around infantry. They had lots of people that fought on foot, not necessarily a lot of cavalry, though they did have some cavalry, especially some chariots, some light cavalry. No heavy cavalry, though, so we're not doing anything like a cavalry charge. But lots of people with bows. They were also really, really good at siege tactics. So the Assyrians of the Iron Age are some of the first people that really develop excellent level siege tactics. And they start building siege engines. They are quite good at taking walled cities. And they are very scary for doing so. They sort of perfect the concept of battering ram and catapult. They also have the good old-fashioned covered siege tower that allows their troops to kind of climb up some ladders and show right up at the top of your walls. They could actually move these around and construct them on site. And this was really scary stuff, right? The Assyrians, if they showed up to conquer you, were going to do it a pretty good percentage of the time, right? They were just really scary, and you really didn't want to mess with them. If they gave you the option of paying the tribute, trust me, you wanted to take the tribute, right? Yes, it's very efficient having the vassals, and sometimes the tribute wasn't just in money. Some of the tribute could be in manpower, right? Like if we're going to go conquer one of your neighbors, we're expecting you to send troops to help us out. And this wasn't necessarily the worst deal for some of these tributary kingdoms because they might not like their neighbors anyway, right? And so the Assyrians are kind of doing them a favor by saying, hey, you want to load up with us and go kick the crap out of your enemies? And they're like, heck yeah, that sounds amazing. And a lot of people kind of got suckered into it because of that. You know, it looks really good on the outside, and then you realize that Assyria completely surrounds you now on your little island of tribute in the middle of a sea of Assyrian power, right? So moving on, the next big guy is a dude named Shalmaneser III. And Shalmaneser is this dude. We see him here, again, with the fairly stereotypical expected really big curly beard, long kind of mullet-looking haircut, again holding his bowl, which is, you know, his kind of like offering being fanned and shaded by attendants. And we got this guy on the ground down here, kneeling in obeisance to Shalmaneser. And this is actually really interesting piece of depiction here because we know who this guy is. Because of the inscription that's on this stone, this, by the way, is referred to as the Jehu obelisk. We know that this guy's name is Jehu. And that doesn't make a lot of deal for a lot of different people, but this is pretty interesting because we know that Jehu was one of the kings of the Israelites, and this is one of the only depictions that we have of an Israelite king that comes from outside of the region, and it is pretty indicative of the fact that Shalmaneser beats the crap out of these people a lot. So Shalmaneser III, again, is a pretty big expansion-minded guy. He rules from 859 to 824, so he's got a pretty good run of things, right? He is going to be really interested in getting rid of one of the larger enemies of Assyria, which is a country that sat right about here. And that ancient country is called Urartu. Urartu is a big ancient culture that is pretty dominant in the Iron Age. It controlled territory as far north as the Black Sea at certain points, all the way over here towards the Caspian at certain points, but it sat right here. So I mentioned earlier there weren't really Armenians as we understand them, but there was a kingdom that sat sort of right where Armenia was. They had several different capitals, but if you go to the modern country of Turkey, right here on the shores of Lake Van, there is a city called Van, but it is ancient Tushpa, which was the capital of Urartu. And when we have some fighting right in that area, I'll show you some pictures of it here in just a second. But Shalmaneser III is a pretty powerful guy. Now, he wanted to conquer all of this, all of the Levantine region. He wanted to basically move as far south as he could to stage grounds on attacking Egypt. Everybody in the ancient world wants to control Egypt. It was the source of one of the most plentiful food supplies on the face of the earth. And in the ancient world, food is power, right? Food runs your army. Food turns into money. Food is the big commodity, right? So you want to take over Egypt. And for Assyria to get down here to Egypt, you needed to take over all of this first. And while Shalmaneser crippled Urartu and pretty much wrecked them to the point that they couldn't cause much of a trouble, he does run into a bit of an interesting mix of people here at a place called Karkar. Karkar is a pretty interesting battle site. This is a big battle at 853. And as Assyria begins to expand into the Levantine region, all of these different little states that had independence recognized that they were on the list, right? They're going to end up being targeted by the Assyrians. And if we put aside our differences and we sort of form like an alliance of frenemies, we could maybe beat the Assyrians. And there is a big alliance that gets put together by the guy that is the king of Aram Damascus. And there are like 12 different little kingdoms and city-states that join this alliance. And they tempt Shalmaneser into this big battle in 853 at a place called Karkar. And they actually defeat him. Now, to the level at which Shalmaneser was defeated is a bit of a debate, because he's obviously not completely incapable of fighting, because he rules for another 20 plus years after this and does move into other areas. For example, he takes more of Babylon just about 5 or 6 years after the battle at Karkar. But the question here is, how much did they scare him, right? How much did they shake him? Even if the battle was more or less a mutually assured destruction kind of thing, he knew that there were people interested in resisting his expansion down in the Mediterranean region. So this is kind of the end of Shalmaneser's push into the Levantine region for most of his reign. Now, at the very, very tail end of his reign, in the 830s and 820s, he's going to set his eyes on some specific sites in the northern part of the region, right around here, which were cities that we would call part of the Phoenician culture. And the Phoenicians were especially interesting to take over because they were sort of the first countries in the Middle East that really came out of the collapse of the Bronze Age. And the Phoenicians, by that point, had a trade network that spanned almost the entire Mediterranean Sea. So if Shalmaneser were able to take some of these big cities like Tyre or Byblos or Ugarit, these cities would offer him a potential contact with the rest of the Mediterranean and a lot of money, right? And again, he kind of had this idea that we should go down and take Egypt, and a lot of these big cities also had ships, right? These big Phoenician cities were almost all directly on the sea. Almost all of them had really big and very important ports. and boats were very, very common there. So this is something that the Assyrians did not have because they were primarily a land-based country. But if you're going to attack Egypt, you need to have a navy because the Egyptians almost always have a navy. And that would, of course, been really great. Now, the Phoenicians are kind of a delicate thing to mess with. You don't want to crush them because then the colonies of the Phoenicians that owe allegiance back to the homeland would be very ticked at you, and they would not necessarily be interested in doing a lot of trade with you if you killed their mother cities. So what Shalmaneser was mostly doing is hoping that he could entice some of these or gently threaten some of these cities into becoming vassals or perhaps just the first level tributary. And it doesn't seem like he had the world's best luck at this. And after Shalmaneser III, there's actually a little bit of a period where Assyria kind of has to take stock, right? A van down by the river. More like a van down by the lake. Are Assyrians predecessors of Arabs? They are not. The Assyrians are a different people group than the Arabs. He tried to conquer them gently. What's up, Snowlock? How's it going? Aloha, Frank. How are you, my friend? Yes, conquer them gently. But from about 824, for about the next 60 years, until about 745, there is a bit of trouble with the Assyrians. And part of this comes from the fact that Shalmaneser ruled so long, right? He ruled for almost 30 years. And when you have a king that rules that long, you end up having adult children when he dies. And you have multiple adult children when he dies. And of course, then everybody kind of wants to take over. But when everybody wants to take over, what that means is you form court politics, and there are going to be factions, and some people are going to support this son under one regime. They're going to support this other son under another regime. And you end up having this internal argument stuff. And what this period of time, this sort of period of weakness from 824 to about 745 manages to do is let a lot of the regions recover, right? Urartu takes this opportunity to rebuild its cities and especially build really big fortifications and build them in places that are much more difficult to assault. A lot of the cities in Urartu that are built during the late 800s and early 700s are going to be on these really big, tall outcroppings of rock that are going to be very difficult to assault. And this was done specifically because the Assyrians were so good at taking cities in the first place. If your city was just on a natural rise or on the top of a tell, but they could roll their siege weapons up to it, you're still in deep doo-doo, right? So if you're building your castles on top of a mountain and the walls of the mountain are sheer-sided, now it's really hard for the Assyrians to launch things into your city or battering ram down your particular walls. Don Does Math. Welcome in, Don Does Math. How are you all, mathletes? Hope you're doing well. Welcome in. My name is Shane, and I teach history and sociology and anthropology at the college level. And normally on stream, what I do here is try to talk history in a way that is accessible and much more fun and tells it as a narrative instead of trying to tell it as a series of facts where we have to, focus on memorizing all of the dates, which, let's be honest, memorizing dates stinks. So we try to talk about stuff in a way that's interesting. And right now we're talking about Assyria, and specifically we are talking about Iron Age Assyria coming out of the Bronze Age collapse, and we're talking about this guy right here, who is Shalmaneser III, who just ruled for quite some time and then died. And unfortunately for the Assyrians, but very fortunate for all of the neighboring kingdoms, the Assyrians kind of fell into a bit of a civil war. So welcome, Don. How was your stream? If there are things that you could share to promote yourself, like social media, I would be very happy for you to share those. What were you up to on stream? Taking it math. What sorts of math? What was the plan today? So let me say hello to everybody. Don, first, thanks so much for the raid. I really appreciate you trusting me with your friends. Laz Joma, welcome in. Good to see you as a first-time chatter. Socioanthro, absolutely. That's kind of my thing. Anders 0K, or I don't know if that's Andersock. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but welcome. Good to see you. Yeah, there's a neat little corner of Twitch that does math. And if I'm not mistaken, Don, I think you have rated me before, and I made the mistake of not following you at that time. So let me fix that. Nothing too special to mention. You learned how to solve a type of differential equation that was new to me and had a neat set of problems from on... Oh, I can do this. Andoshi? No, that's a circle instead of a... I'm trying to learn katakana right now. So I get on... I think that's Andoshi, but I'm not 100% for sure. You're welcome to correct my reading of the kanji there. Or not kanji, katakana. I'm trying to learn Japanese. It's not going very well. I have dyslexia and I don't read English easily. And trying to read hiragana and katakana is like brain murder, right? So I know that that's on because that's the kana for A and then in. And then do. And the L shape... see, I think I'm confusing that with the hiragana because the hiragana for she is like that. But I don't actually know what that symbol is. I haven't gotten through all of the kana yet. It takes me a long time to add symbols to the mix because I have to like repetitively like bang them into my head. Yeah. And I'm actually running dark mode. Also, Cave Geek, you came in and I didn't say, hey, how's it going, man? Good to see you. So we're going to continue our discussion here about Assyria, but if anybody has questions about anything in general that I might be interested in, literally just a list that popped up right there, feel free to ask me questions. Tangents are totally okay. Okay, so katakana... so the L shape is the katakana version of that one. The hiragana, is that wa? It's very small on my screen. What are considered to be high culture... Oh, so that's re. Okay, sorry. What are considered to be high culture and low culture entertainments in Assyria? Historically, at this time, there weren't really very many entertainments for low culture. If you got to go to a really cool a really cool religious ceremony, or you got to witness some public, like corporal punishment stuff, that's about all that you're going to get. Because there's not really a lot of stuff going on for the average poor person. Upper class people have quite a bit of stuff. They get to go to the cool productions of music. They don't necessarily have theater as we understand it, but they do have what are almost proto versions of like opera, where you go and listen to people sing, but they're singing stories. So it's not opera, right? But they're singing these hymns, and these hymns are very frequently based on mythological stories, historical stories, etc. And yeah, they tend to have a lot of parties where they just hang out and get super blitzed out of their mind and eat a lot of really good food. So, public beheadings are entertainment. In the ancient world, absolutely. Absolutely. If there's going to be a lot of murdering of captives, that's something where you want to be. Because usually it was okay to get off of work to go see those, because the government actually liked when the lower class people witnessed this stuff. So you could pretty easily get cleared from your day job to go watch some public executions, because the government might even tell you that you have to go anyway. So, you get off of the morning from work, you get to go see a lot of foreign people get their heads chopped off. This is a pretty good morning in the ancient world for a person that's going to labor 10 to 12 hours a day, right? So, they don't have TV and the internet, and they definitely don't have TikTok, right? So, pretty hard to fill out a day when all you really got to do is work. So, kind of stinks, but that's the reality of the situation in the ancient world. All right. So we have this period of time where things are rough and things aren't so great in Assyria, and we're having civil wars and we're having fights between each other. And this is going to be solved by the ascendancy of one of my favorite ancient Assyrians, and definitely one of the craziest named ancient Assyrians kings, Tiglath-Pileser III. Yep, this is his actual name. His name is actually Tiglath-Pileser III. Sounds like a watch this because this is what's going to happen you too if you defy us. That's a lot of it. That's a lot of it for sure. Got to forge those common experiences with everybody else to bind you together socially. That's part of it too, right? Trauma bonding, maybe, but also universal understanding of who has the power and who you want to make happy and who you don't want to tick off, right? For example, this guy. You don't want to tick this guy off, right? Water cooler conversations, exactly. Hey, did you get to go to the mass beheading the other day? Oh, yeah, man, I got to go. It was pretty great. I was standing really close to the temple, got to see all the blood. It was pretty cool. How about you? Man, I had to show up late. I was standing way in the back. Didn't really get to see very much, but, still got the day off. This gives you an idea for a beer brand targeting history buffs called Tiglath Pilsner. That'd be very clever, and I know at least 4 or 5 people that would buy that just because it was called that. I once had, I still have him. He's one of my dear friends and one of the people that has taught me most about history on Earth. He, for a period of time, was naming all of his cats after Assyrian Iron Age kings. And he had Ashurbanipal, Adad Nirari, Ito, the Tuipi? I don't have any idea how I'm supposed to interpret that. E to the 2I pi. I bet that's it. E to the 2I pi. I gotcha. Okay. I see it now. I'm with you. Okay. I was trying to turn that into a word. Okay. Yep. Very clever. Very clever. I try to make everything a word, but thank you so much for the follow and welcome to the adventure. But yeah, he had a cat named Tiglath-Pileser III. David Peterson, what's going on, man? Good to see you. You're forming a construction company, Tiglath-Pileser III. We special in TIG welding, plaster lathe, and pilasters. I dig it. TIG welding, the inferior version of actual welding. But, anyway, you're good. But the point here is, this guy is very scary, and if we... nope, wrong button. If we look at him, he looks like this. Powerful. Look at how big this guy's beard is. And if you note, we've actually seen a bit of a transition in beard styles, whereas previous kings would have the row of curls and then some straight and some other curls. This guy's got little bunches and curls all the way down. So his beard is uber impressive. Nice watch. It's a Rolex, right? It's the watch of kings. No, actually, this is a flower, and it's pretty common in Assyrian artwork, especially as it relates to royal authority. But yeah, pretty cool hat. He's got his scepter here of command. Tiglath-Pileser, really scary dude. Not somebody that you'd want to tick off, right? What's his deal? Well, he's going to take over in 745, and he's actually going to kind of, how do I say this the right way? We don't actually know if this guy was royal or not. He claims to be descended from the royal family, but we're not really sure. There are some historians that think he was really just a general in the military. Other people think that he was just a really rich noble that had a lot of capability of maneuvering the political scene that was at the time very fraught with factions. But regardless of who he was and how he got there, he ends up taking over and sitting on the throne. And he very quickly brings an end to the Assyrian Civil War. And he does that by killing the entire rest of the royal family. So if you want to get rid of factions within the royal family, the way you do that is to kill the entire royal family. So this is why a lot of people think that he probably wasn't actually part of the royal family, because theoretically he would then be killing his brothers and cousins and uncles and perhaps even a father. You don't necessarily go full scorched earth, kill everybody, and make sure that there are no heirs if you have a more legitimate claim to the throne, right? This will sound dumb, but his ear is beautifully done. Oh, yeah. I mean, this is high-skilled artwork, right? The amount of skill that goes into carving a relief like this is an extraordinary amount of skill, right? To get these little curls on the sides of his sideburn right here, that's skill, right? You don't just go at a big wall full of stone with a chisel and get something like that and make it look really good, right? This is just really, really cool stuff. But again, this is indicative of the level of skill that Assyria had. And by the way, for those of you looking for our flower mark, here we go here on the side and also here on the forehead, right? So again, just a symbol. How cool would it be to have a portrait made of stone? Well, you can actually get one of these today. The kicker is it's going to be really expensive. In the ancient world, he could just say, hey, go make me a really cool picture, and if you do it wrong, I'm going to kill you. And that's pretty good motivation. And especially after he's killed the entire royal family, you might want to do a good job on it, right? He also decides that he needs to reorganize the military. And in the process of reorganizing the military, guess who else he manages to kill? And if you're going to say rival generals, you are correct. He completely reorganizes the military to move them away from being more answerable to lower level nobility and more directly answerable to him. Because that's what he wants. He wants to be in charge of everything, and he wants everybody to answer to him. And this is going to be quite successful, because he is going to do something that Assyria had not done in quite some time, and he's going to march down south into southern part of Mesopotamia, and he is going to just annex all of Babylon and just say, y'all are in our world now. This doesn't go very well for Babylon. They can't really do very much about it. They're going to just have to kind of take it. He does allow them to rule somewhat on their own, but he's not done yet. He's also going to go over and take a really big chunk of the Levantine region. And he's going to annex most of the northern part of what we would call the Levant or the Holy Land, a large portion. Well, I guess I could just show you the map, right? So the purple area is where he started, right? And the blue area is all of the land that he conquered. And while this doesn't necessarily look like that much by square mileage, the number of cities that are sizable in this area and the number of people that he has to fight during this area or in this area is extensive. because the areas that we're looking at were incredibly densely populated for the time and had tons and tons of cities. And if you were here with us at the beginning of the stream, you'll remember that Shalmaneser III, a previous king, had been defeated here at Karkar in 853. And when Tiglath-Pileser shows back up, he not only steamrolls the place, but also manages to extend his rule all the way down into taking over the kingdom of Aram Damascus. Now, you might go, what's up with this? What's this little strip of land right here? Well, that little strip of land right there is the Phoenician cities. Because again, you don't necessarily want to squash the Phoenician cities. You just want to make sure that they know who's boss. You want to make sure that you've got them under your thumb so that if they decide to get rowdy, you can then subsequently squash them. But by surrounding the Phoenician cities on land and blocking them off except for everywhere from the sea, he puts himself in a position to be very persuasive. Let's just say it that way, right? Karkar is an awesome name, by the way. Yeah, for sure. It's like Jar Jar, but not. Indeed. Is the blue area populated because it's irrigated? Yes, absolutely, Lopta. Also, good to see you, Lopta. Welcome in. I feel like the second time you try to conquer an area, you have tons of knowledge about the approach routes and logistics that you didn't have the first time. That's true. That's true. The biggest issue here is that because of the reorganization of the military and the solidification under control of Tiglath-Pileser, he was just much more effective across the board, right? And maybe also local politics knowledge to divide and conquer a bit. All of that is absolutely true. But I want to definitely state his overwhelming military prowess here. This is going to include quite a bit of politicking, and it's absolutely going to include some strategy stuff and strategic planning and negotiation and all of that stuff. But he is absolutely playing from the dominant position in this scenario. What's up, Allie? Good to see you. So Tiglath-Pileser is a big, powerful dude, right? Strategery. I was about to say strategery, but I just kind of cut it off in the middle and mumbled. I'm actually quite tired. I'm running on fumes and the fact that I love talking about this. This is one of my favorite topics to talk about in the ancient world, so I get to just kind of push through, right? Even the areas that he's not conquering, he's bringing under vassaldom. He moves into Anatolia. He's going to move some of his armies further over into Media, which is this region right here, and Persia. And he's going to bring some of these people under vassalage. He's going to move further south down the Levantine coast to this area. And if you were with us last stream on last Thursday, we talked about the Kingdom of Judah. He's going to put them under a position of vassalage. And Tiglath-Pileser introduces sort of almost a fourth stage of the progression. So the first stage, again, is I'm going to make you pay tribute to me. The second stage is I'm going to kill your king and put one of my kings on your throne, and you get to have limited self-rule, but I'm still running the show. And then the third stage is I'm going to conquer you, but he introduces sort of like a 3.5 stage, or maybe a full stage 4, depending on how you want to look at this. And it is Tiglath-Pileser that really starts focusing on exiling people. If I have to come into your country and I take you over, I'm not leaving you in your own country. The number one group of people that are going to rebel against you after you conquer them are the old leadership of the country you just conquered, because they're the ones that are going to still have means. They're the ones that are going to still have a lot of influence. They might be directly related to the religious or old political organization of your country. So I'm not going to let you stay there. What I'm going to do when I beat you is take all of your people away, and I'm going to move them to some super distant part of the Assyrian Empire where you will never see them again. And when this happens, you can't really formulate a revolution from 2,000 miles away in the ancient world. And because he depopulates some areas with exile, he will then move other exiles from other kingdoms into your area to continue working the land and running the cities and keeping the, sort of the lights on, if you will. So this is like playing musical chairs with kingdoms that he doesn't really like. I'm going to depopulate one of these people and send them to this other place, and then I'm going to take those people who are also causing me trouble and bring them here and say, here's your new country, make me some money, right? And this is incredibly effective, right? I guess a general taking over as a ruler is probably a lot more effective than many generals, given the project on... So, like, this is why one of the big theories is that he had previous military experience, because when he comes into the game and sort of like wipes the board clean, he really does make a lot of significant military advances and does significantly reorganize the Assyrian world to be much more monopolar. He definitely centralizes a lot of the authority. He doesn't like people questioning him. He doesn't like people not doing exactly what they're supposed to. But what this is going to do is really leave a lot of people in a position where they just are completely reliant on the Assyrian power position. Now, Tiglath-Pileser can't live forever. Obviously, when you get old, you tend to die. And we're going to get another king who is not quite as capable that follows him. This guy's name is Shalmaneser V. And so here's Shalmaneser V, and you go, well, this kind of looks like a crappy relief. Why don't we have a better picture of this guy? Well, it's because Shalmaneser V isn't the world's best leader, and he only gets to hold on for about 5 years. Did someone scrape off his beard? Well, this is a relief, and because of the moving and time of the relief, parts of it have fallen off, and they've been replaced with plaster as an attempt at stabilizing the surrounding parts of the relief. So yeah, like this isn't original, this isn't original, this isn't original. It's just been sort of put in there to keep the rest of this from falling to pieces. But this is Shalmaneser V. Parts of me have fallen off and been replaced too. Yeah, there we go. He rules from 727 to 722. And he's not really very effective. He's going to really tick off the Egyptians, because he keeps wanting to push further down into the Levantine region and get closer to the borders of Egypt. And he gets some very sternly worded warnings from the Egyptian pharaohs about how he should stay away and leave them alone and not get involved. And he doesn't really pay very much attention to these. And if we're just being honest at this point, Egypt couldn't really do very much to stop him. But the locals were giving him enough trouble in the Levantine region that he couldn't really expand further anyway. Because of his perception of weakness, Babylon is going to get a little bit more independent, and this is going to cause some trouble, which is probably why he only lasts 5 years before he suddenly but certainly gets replaced by this guy. Shalmaneser gets replaced by this dude who's really super powerful. This guy's name is Sargon II. Big, powerful king. Now, if we ask ourselves, where did Sargon come from? This is another one of these questions that we really don't know the answer to. It is quite likely, and even assumed by some historians, that Sargon was a usurper. That basically saw Shalmaneser V as a weak ruler and said, we just got to get rid of this guy because, like, we can't really keep going this way. Babylon is getting stronger. We're losing ground with our vassals in the Levantine region. We just need to kind of nip this in the bud. And it's interesting that Sargon's family is going to set up a new dynasty. We're going to refer to these as the Sargonid dynasty. And most historians don't try to make a direct family link between Shalmaneser and Sargon. because it doesn't necessarily look like they were super duper related. We don't see a lot of pictures of them together. We are pretty sure that Shalmaneser V was the son of Tiglath-Pileser III, and that's because we have imagery of them together, but we don't have imagery of Shalmaneser V and Sargon together. And it was very popular for Assyrian kings who knew that they were going to pass the throne to their son to start making works of art where they were shown together, so to kind of get the people the idea that this is the guy that's going to take over for me. And because we don't see any elements of Shalmaneser and Sargon together, the ruling is sort of that this guy took over. We don't actually know exactly what happened to Shalmaneser. It's quite likely that he got assassinated. If you want to give the assassin command, we'll just say that he was, so that somebody can trigger that off if they want to. Sargon the Usurper has a nice ring to it. Very Targaryen. I dig it. I kind of dig it a lot, right? Anyway, so his name isn't even really super duper what we might call Assyrian. His name is actually much more Old Akkadian. So was he even part of the Assyrian leadership before this, or was he maybe another general or something? We don't really know. He just kind of shows up. But man, when he shows up, things are gonna go crazy. Was he from Nova Scotia? No. No, he wasn't. But first thing he does, okay, look, we're having trouble along the border. We got to secure the border. So what are we going to do? We're going to go destroy the northern kingdom of Israel. And he does this and exiles the entire northern kingdom of Israel. This is about 30,000 Jewish people back over to the northern part of the Assyrian territory. These are the fabled, finger quote, lost tribes, which, by the way, if you read the historical documentation, aren't really lost. They know where they are the whole time because they got deported to Babylon. They didn't end up in North America. They didn't end up in Japan. They didn't end up in China. This whole Lost Tribes of Israel thing, we know where they went. The people that say that we don't know where they went aren't reading the documents. They just like making really weird, questionable posts on YouTube and TikTok, or write really crappily researched books in history. So that would actually be a really interesting viewer request stream, is what happened to the finger quote lost tribes of Israel. Because we know. We ended up in they ended up in Africa. We know this. So the ones that are in Africa actually claim to be the descendants of the kingdom of Judah. That was after the Chaldeans conquered the southern part of the kingdom of Judah and ran them out of... sarcasm. I'm sorry. Missed that whole thing. I'm still in teacher mode, right? Oh, they're Atlantis. Right, Atlantis. Yeah, I forgot. No, you don't, Lopta. You just need to have the right number of points. And I'm not currently doing viewer request at the moment because we need to... we're kind of in a weird phase with the stream right now. I don't know how many people know this, so I'll just say it again. Because of much outcry and public request, I have started a YouTube channel. And in the process of moving all of my VODs from Twitch to YouTube, I discovered that I had not saved all of the VODs. So the stream that we're doing right now is Adventures in History 19, right? This is a stream that I originally did back in the fall of 2020, right? So 4 years ago, I did this stream originally, but I failed to save the VOD. So I'm not doing all of them again. I'm just doing the ones that I missed saving the VOD for. And I'm trying to focus on getting those gaps filled in so that I can transfer everything over. And when I get everything filled in gap-wise, we'll start back up with history, and we're going to pick up in the basically the 1300s, right? So the 1300s AD, because that's where we ended. We did like the 1300s AD phase and went all the way around the world with that. And when we pick back up, we'll do like 1400s kind of stuff. And we'll go through that phase again. But and at that point, we'll pick back up doing viewer requests. This is also because I have a lot more work on my plate right now than normal. I'm spending a lot of my time designing and building a new class. I'm teaching cultural anthropology in the spring for the first time. And when I teach a new class, that means I have to build it, right? So I have to make all of the exams, I have to make all of the quizzes, I have to make all of the writing assignments. And that is taking a lot of my time. So redoing streams that I've already done makes it a lot easier for me to still have content that a lot of people didn't get to see. I also get to go back through and tweak some stuff if there have been new things that have come out about these topics. And I also get to do things like, save some time, because all I really need to do is go through my pictures and pick pictures that fit the discussion, because I'm using the same outline that I did back in 2024, or sorry, 2020, that I'm using right now, because I'm a information hoarder, right? One teacher to another, you feel that. What do you teach? I'm just going to call you Pi, if that's okay. What do you teach, Pi? Are mature students a nuisance? I've taught immature students, and I'd rather teach mature students. The question is, at what point does one become mature? And that's not tied to a specific age. I've had junior high students that are more mature than college students, right? Do Assyrian writings make it to Egypt? Yes, Robin, and we're actually, by the end of the stream, we will have Assyria ruling in Egypt, but that's kind of a spoiler. I guess if you know the history, it's not really a spoiler. It happened, almost 3,000 years ago. So. After 10 centuries, it's okay to spoil it, right? Because the joke is like, after 10 years, it's okay to spoil it. So after 10 centuries, is it okay to spoil the history? Anyway, Sargon II. I will detour off like mad, and it's totally okay to do that. I just have to kind of remind myself to get on with it. And if I ever get too far off into the weeds, there's actually a command that my viewers love to use, which is literally just get on with it, right? Which, of course, is from Monty Python, which is also where this comes from. I'm a gigantic nerd, by the way, right? Sargon 2.0, indeed. So these Jewish people are causing him a lot of trouble, so he goes to the capital of the northern Jewish kingdom, Samaria, destroys the city, and exiles 30,000 people. He's almost going to completely wipe out Urartu, and he brings the war very much to their doorstep. And I can show you some pretty cool pictures here, if I can get my pictures to load. In 2022, I went to Turkey, and first off, I'll put on the adventure hat so that I can put on the adventure hat. I like putting on the adventure hat, right? I get to wear this when I show you pictures of a thing that I've been to or a place that I've been. So, do I have a teaching hat? I don't have a teaching hat. That's sort of just like the mass of hair that's on top of my head. I like to travel a lot, and I'm very lucky to travel as much as I do. But I burn in the sun, so I can't necessarily just go out. So I have to wear the hat to keep my scalp and ears and face in the shade. But I can show you really cool pictures of the capital of Urartu from this time period. It's called Van today, and it looks like this. So again, the Urartians, and that's actually the way that we refer to them, Urartians. It's kind of crazy. After the first big Assyrian expansion into the area, are going to move their capital to this location, and they're going to build their new fortifications. I'll type it here in chat for you. Urartian. On top of this big mountain, basically. So this is the ancient capital fortress of Urartu, and you can see here the original remains of their castle. And so this castle here is about 2,700 years old, and this is still the original mud and mud brick and post support that would have been there from the time. Now, there are much later additions. A lot of this stuff was added and repaired by the Ottomans. This is looking out over where the ancient city would have been, and you can see here where they've done quite a bit of excavation that are sort of like the, I don't know, you know, the little villages parted and the places where people would, you know, have houses and buildings and stuff like that, the workshops, etc. So this whole site within this really big fence here is all the remains of ancient Tushpa. That is a great spot for a castle. Were these mud brick buildings or stone buildings? Both, Tuna. They would have had mud brick on top of stone, and then sometimes stone finishing in front of the mud brick. These are ancient steps that you would have used to get up there. Obviously, there are modern walkways. But this site itself is quite large. It's obviously mostly unexcavated. This is the modern city of Van in the background. Actually a really, really cool city. Well, really enjoyed my time here. I was also sick as a dog, which is unfortunate because it kept me from doing some pretty cool stuff. They are poppies. Yep. Turkey has a lot of natural poppies. Here's some of the original fortifications, some of the original cut stone work where they would have had markets as you came up the hill. So these are all little stalls where people would have set up a shop. Again, the castle, the keep. This is much, much newer. This pointed arch here is a dead giveaway that this is Ottoman. And Matt wants to do poppies. All right, let's get through the photos here of Tushpa, and then we will do poppies. I just wanted to show you this because I really like castles, and this is a really cool castle. And again, this mud work here is really, really ancient and thousands of years old. And just wicked cool to go see, right? This is another picture that I wanted to get here. There are some others. Yeah, here we go. So this is the top of the hill, and this is Lake Van. I'll show you this on a map here in just a second. Yes, there are mosques around this area. The majority religion in Turkey is Islam. There's, of course, a big tower here on the end of the point that looks out over the lake. This is just an absolutely beautiful location. Really, really cool place. So you can go see it if you want to. It's really cool. So I told you I'd show you where this is on the map. So this is Lake Van. And this is the modern city of Van. And the thing that I just showed you is this big ridge right here. And you can see how this big ridge just sort of pokes out and has all of these ancient walls on top of it. So that's what we were on top of. And it's a really good place to put a fortress. Have I traveled to Pakistan? I have not been to Pakistan. Ali Zasif, welcome in. Good to see you. I'd love to go to Pakistan. There's a lot of really cool history there that I would absolutely love to go to. One of the coolest places that I'd like to go to is a really big city, a very ancient, very, very old city called Mohenjo-Daro. It's one of the larger cities of the Harappan culture. And I would absolutely love to go there to see that. The Harappa itself is also in Pakistan. There are really cool ancient fortifications up in the hills of Pakistan that I'd love to go see. Some of the stuff from Oh man, there's just so many different cool cultures there. Uh, yeah, I mean, I'd love to go to Pakistan. Oh, you're from there. Interesting. What part are you from, geographically wise? North, south, east, west? Okay, so Matt has redeemed poppies. Um, this is a new thing that I've added. It's kind of goofy. Oh, you're from Karachi. Excellent. Karachi is super ancient city. Lots of really cool things there. One of the oldest identifiable trade cities in that entire part of the world. Really, really cool. The food is good. Yeah, I bet. I love traveling to ancient cultures, or love traveling to other countries and eating their food, man. I am a food kind of guy, right? Anyway, let's do poppies real quick for Matt. So here we go, everybody. Here is your moment of Zen. Hey there, everybody. How's your day? I hope that your day is going nicely. There are people everywhere in the world that are having good days, and I hope that you're one of them. Imagine yourself in a field full of poppies. Pleasant, loving, surrounded by beautiful landscapes, pointing at something slightly to the right off screen. What is it? Is it a bird? I don't know. Is it a cool cloud that's shaped like a monkey playing a drum? It could be. Whatever your imagination makes it, that's what's slightly off to the right of the screen. And this has been Poppies and a moment of peace. And I hope that you're having a good one. Let's get back to the history. There's poppies for you. If I ever go to Pakistan, go to Saif-ul-Malak Lake. Interesting. That's pretty cool. I'll have to put that on the list. I don't know when I'd be able to travel to Pakistan. I unfortunately do not have loads and loads of money. If I had unlimited amounts of money, I would travel all the time. But I don't. So I know that getting to Pakistan is very expensive from my part of the world because it's a very, very expensive plane ticket because you have to. It's almost on the opposite side of the planet from where I'm at. And I don't live near very good airports, so that would be probably the biggest cost. The closest area that I've come to actually planning for is Uzbekistan, which is not Pakistan. It's quite far north of Pakistan. But I would really love to go to Uzbekistan. I mean, I'd like to go anywhere if we're just being honest, right? Yeah, I'm in the States. I'm in the southern part of the States. Not around a very big city, though, so I have to drive to get to the decent-sized airports so that I can get to other places, right? So it takes me about an hour and a half to get to a big airport. So, oh, you're in Houston. Okay, yeah, so I'm about 6 hours from you. I am very far away from the weather. Neither of the hurricanes have been anywhere close to me, but we do have friends of the stream that are directly in the hurricane's path. I've heard from one of them today. If anybody knows Steve Conley has said that he's doing okay. That's good. I have another friend that's up in North Carolina that I think still has no power. I've not heard from friend of the stream JMR Killer, who is just outside of Tampa Bay. If I don't hear from him today, I'm going to message him tomorrow just to sort of like hope that I can get in touch with him. Because yeah, I know Kit. Have you heard from Kit? Is she okay? And also I haven't heard from Words. I'm losing all of my words. Her name starts with B, and her husband's name is Tim. Good gracious, I'm just losing all of my... Bianca. I haven't heard from Bianca. Has anybody heard from Bianca? Yeah, if I don't hear from Kit, I'll text her too. I have Kit's number. I can text her. Right now, I know that a lot of Florida cell phones are just completely pooped because of wind damage. So I don't necessarily want to be one of the people that sort of barrages them as soon as their stuff comes back on. But yeah, I haven't heard from Kit. I haven't checked social media for Kit either. So if anybody hears from any of these people, it would be great to let us know. Anyway, so let me catch back up with chat. Where did paved roads first come into existence? The way that we would understand them to be paved, probably the Romans. You never had a bad time in the Netherlands. I've been there, but I've never, I haven't had a very good experience. Well, I didn't say that. I said that very poorly. I've been to the Netherlands. I've never had a fulfilling experience because I've only ever had a limited amount of time to do anything, and it's always been on like flight layovers. So I have not explored the Netherlands as much as I would like to. I mean, I spent a night in the Netherlands, but by the time my plane landed, everything was closed, and I had to fly out again before everything opened, right? So I didn't really get any kind of experience. I was there for literally just a night. Karakoram Highway. Yeah. So that's the kind of place that I'd like to go. But come on, we'll go. Don't tempt me. Don't tempt me, Silver. I'd like to go back to Germany. There's a lot of cool stuff there that I've never seen. So, it always comes back to the money thing, though. It's expensive to travel. Sargon beats the junk out of Urartu to the point that Urartu almost gets completely destroyed. He's going to go put down the problems in Babylon. He's going to also decide that there needs to be a new capital instead of the ones that are new or the newer one. So he builds a new capital called Dur-Sharukin. This is going to be sort of like his position. This one's a little bit further north and a little bit more central to the territory that he's controlling. But if asked what's the capital of Assyria, and you say under Sargon II, the capital is Dur-Sharukin, right? Unfortunately for Sargon and his sort of power moves, he ends up dying in battle, which is kind of rare because he dies against basically a nobody, and they kind of expected to steamroll these people, so they didn't really send a lot of troops, but he ends up getting killed, and not only does he end up getting killed, they don't get to recover his body, which is a big slap in the face, right? You want to give your king a royal burial, but they don't end up getting his body back, and it kind of ends up getting disgraced. So Sargon, big powerful king, expands a lot and then ends up running into some pretty bad luck and dying on the battlefield. He gets replaced by a guy named Sennacherib, who takes over in 705. You've been to Mohenjo-Daro. It's beautiful. I am very jealous. Your house in Pakistan is an hour from Mohenjo-Daro. Jealousy right here. One of the coolest ancient sites in the entire world. Would absolutely love to go see Mohenjo-Daro. I hope that in the last couple of years there have been further steps to keep the site safe, specifically from the river. So Mohenjo-Daro is right beside a river that floods a lot, and especially the lower part of the city is in the floodplain. And because of the way that the excavation was done, they dug up a lot of the site and then just kind of left it exposed. And I don't know if you know what happens to mud brick if you flood it with water over and over again, but it ends up destroying the mud bricks. And I hope that they have taken further steps. I read an article a couple of years ago about how it was eroding fairly rapidly. And I don't know if there's enough money in archaeological budget to shore up the sort of flood wall on the site. but that would be something that I would definitely advocate for, because I really hope that we can preserve what is one of the oldest cities on Earth, right? Um, so, anyway, Sennacherib. Who's that guy? Well, he's this guy. This is Sennacherib with his cool hat and his cool beard, right? His scepter of power, Sennacherib. He's going to rule from 705 to 681, and he's going to have a lot of trouble. And he's going to be forced to do some pretty crazy things. You want that beard and hair. Yeah, that's pretty standard Assyrian beard and hairstyle. Again, we've seen several pictures of the beard and hair stuff, and we'll look at the guy that follows him in just a second. And yeah, again, Frank, the symbology here is really, really important. You want to make sure that you are being depicted as a king and properly done, so that everybody knows, even without reading, he must be a king, right? Anyway, so, wrong button. So when Sennacherib takes over, he's actually got a lot of problems, because nobody really expected Sargon to go out in the middle of battle. And when your king dies suddenly, you can't recover his body. You gotta sort of scramble. Sennacherib wasn't ready to take over, so he kind of has to fall into the role. And it's not necessarily easy for him. As soon as Sargon dies, a lot of people think, okay, cool, we're now out from under the Assyrian domination, and we can start acting like we're independent again. And one of the places that does that is Babylon. We might understand this because, again, Babylon doesn't like Assyria, and Assyria doesn't like Babylon. So when Sargon dies, he's dying on the other side of the empire, and Babylon's like, hey, look, it's time to go. And so Babylon teams up with this country right beside them called Elam, and they decide they're going to rebel against the Assyrians, and they do so quite successfully. This is going to force Sennacherib to stop what he's doing over on this side of the empire and go over to this side of the empire to put them down. Elam is E-L-A-M, like that. The Elamites are kind of in this region right here. They're just to the east of southern part of Mesopotamia. And the Elamites and the Babylonians had not necessarily always been friends, and in many cases in the ancient world had been fairly mortal enemies. But they both hated Assyria, so enemy of my enemy is my friend, right? Anyway, not Elamites. No, I refer to those people as Muscovites. Playing off of Muscovite being somebody from Moscow, but you spell it with a K instead of with a C. Also because they have to follow whatever Comrade Musk says, right? Because he's obviously the one in charge, and they can't think for themselves without getting in trouble. Sips his coffee with derision. Anyway, so Sennacherib has to bring his army down into Babylon and quell this rebellion. And he does, but as soon as he brings his army to that side, there is then problem over in the Mediterranean. And so then he has to pack up and move all the way back over into the Mediterranean region along the Mediterranean coast, and runs into all of these rebellious people over there, including the states of Phoenicia that had decided that they weren't going to be tributes or play nice with the Assyrians anymore. And he has to end up finally conquering the Phoenicians. And this doesn't go super duper well. Because again, conquering the Phoenicians doesn't mean that you get to take over the Phoenician trade routes. It just means that you get to take over the Phoenician cities. And it's because of stuff like this that Phoenician colonies end up becoming much more independent of the homeland. And if you know anything about Carthage, one of the future mortal enemies of Rome, Carthage was at that time a Phoenician colony. And one of the reasons that the Carthaginians end up being able to establish themselves as independent and take over the western part of the Mediterranean and then run into Rome is because of Sennacherib conquering the Phoenician cities and sort of dissolving the tie between Carthage and back on the eastern part of the Mediterranean. All of this ancient world stuff is tied together, right? So had Sennacherib not done that, would Carthage have been as big of a rival to Rome? We don't know, but it's a fascinating question to ask, right? Because human events all sort of end up dominoing off of each other. Anyway, so he gets over, he has to take the Phoenician cities, and when he gets done taking the Phoenician cities, he hears word that, well, guess what? All of those people back in Babylon are rebelling again. So he decides that something has to be done. Right? Sargon dies. We have to go fight Babylon because they rebelled. As soon as we're over on this side of the empire fighting Babylon, this side of the empire starts causing trouble. So then we got to march all the way back over here and put these people down. And as soon as we get done putting these people down, these people rebel again. So when Sennacherib gets back over to Babylonian territory, he decides that things just have to get done. They don't take over Cyprus. At least, not at this point. Anyway, something's got to be done about this Babylonian problem. And Sennacherib has an idea. Here's what we do. We just destroy Babylon. Now, this is kind of a sketchy, weird thing, right? What do you mean destroy Babylon? And he goes, oh, we need to take the city and literally destroy it. Like pull the walls down, knock all over all of the buildings, burn all the temples, just wreck the entire city. And if nobody lives in Babylon, they're not going to be a problem anymore. And that's what he does. In 689, he destroys the city of Babylon. Just destroys it. And we know this because we dug up the city of Babylon, and guess what? It's all just wrecked at this time period in the stratigraphy. So that sort of solves the Babylonian problem. It can't rebel if it doesn't exist. Now, this is going to start a very weird period of Assyrian history, because the Assyrian culture at this point was very stable in the homeland, and a lot of this northern Mesopotamian territory had been under their control for several hundred years now. So things are starting to get kind of normal. And when things started to get kind of normal, especially in the homeland, you start getting these weird, cultural movements. Did they rebuild it elsewhere? No, they don't rebuild it. Well, not at that point. That's something that happens a little bit later. And they rebuild it at the same spot, but Sennacherib doesn't. But these weird prophecies start showing up. And a lot of people said that Sennacherib ends up getting cursed because he angered the ancient deities for destroying the temple in Babylon. And this is going to kind of haunt him for a little while. And this is definitely going to haunt his son, who is super paranoid. But Sennacherib decides, you know what? Dur-Sharrukin is not where we need to be. We need to make a new capital. And we make a new capital at Nineveh. So if you're asked, what is the capital of Assyria? You go, under whom? And if they say Sennacherib, you say Nineveh. Nineveh is in modern-day Syria. It's much closer to the forward operating base. And the thought is, if we have a capital at Nineveh, is this where we're going to base our armies to strike into Egypt? And it definitely looks that way. If you've gotten rid of Babylon and they're not going to be a problem anymore, Egypt, man, everybody wants Egypt. Everybody kind of wants Egypt. Here's the problem, though. Sennacherib ends up in a fix because he's got all of this weird superstition kind of stuff going on, and there's some weird prophecy stuff going on. And he decides that his oldest son doesn't need to take over. Instead, he needs to let his middle son take over, who's a little bit more liney-uppy with whatever Sennacherib's vision is going to be. Here's the problem, though. That makes his older son very upset, because if you're the oldest son, you obviously want to take over, right? Older son, oh no, very unhappy about this. Very unhappy about this. So what does older son do? Well, older son goes to the third son and says, hey, what's up with middle bro getting the job? And younger son's like, dude, I don't know, man. I wasn't ever going to get the throne anyway. I'm third in line, right? And so the first son convinces the third son to throw in with a plot, and the plot is we're going to kill dad. And so Sennacherib gets assassinated by his oldest son, who is this guy named Esarhaddon. I don't know how many people have been around, and I put too many S's in Esarhaddon. I don't know how many people have been around for this, but we have a command called assassin. And if somebody gets assassinated, you can type !assassin and run up the assassin counter. So far, 83 people have been assassinated since the beginning of doing our streams. So Nineveh is near Hatra. Yeah, so we just did the assassin, so it's got a cooldown time period, I think, of like maybe a minute and a half or something. So, I mean, don't do it again, because the one that I just triggered is for whatchamacallit, for Sennacherib. Next time somebody gets assassinated, feel free to run it up. Oh, you're good. You're good. And it's a cooldown, so when I do it, or when somebody does it, it won't like run it up 3 or 4 times every time a person gets assassinated. But what does Esarhaddon look like? He looks like this. So this is famously known as the Victory Stela of Esarhaddon. Here we see him here again with pretty epic beard and hairstyle, the earring, right? His use of his royal symbols. He's got his own scepter here and a whip. Well, this is not a whip, by the way. I'm sorry. This is a rope that is tied to these people who are basically enslaved. And if you see the headdresses, especially this little thing right here, you should note that these look very Egyptian. And you would be correct, because one of the things that he's about to do is conquer Egypt. So yeah, Nineveh is fairly close to Hatra. It's in the northern part of Syria. Is the flower a chrysanthemum? I don't think so. I don't actually know exactly what the flower is, though. You're welcome to Google that. So you like Assyrian royal flower. I don't actually know what it is. That's an interesting question, though. I should probably know that, right? Anyway, Esarhaddon. He takes over, and he is especially paranoid. Now, he could be paranoid because he killed his dad, right? And if he killed his dad, maybe he's the next guy on the chopping block. What's up, Kyle? Good to see you. But it could be that he's also just very super religious, and he believes a lot of these prophecies. And for his entire reign, he is all about following some prophecies. And he ends up thinking that his family line might be cursed, right? So when Dad destroyed Babylon, that was probably a bad thing. He destroyed the temples. Maybe we're cursed by the old gods. So what we need to do is we need to go back and rebuild Babylon. And so Esarhaddon spends an enormous amount of money to go back and rebuild Babylon. Now, theoretically, as he's rebuilding Babylon, he's rebuilding it as part of the Assyrian Empire, but this is going to end up causing trouble for Assyria, like within 100 years, right? But he does get this one prophecy from a place called Haran, which is in modern-day Turkey, that he would be the ruler of the world. And that's a great prophecy, right? If you've got a prophecy that says that you're going to take over the entire world. This is good stuff. So he decides that what that means is he can conquer Egypt. And he does. This is something that the Assyrians had wanted to do for a long time. But he's going to move down into Egypt and take it over. And when we look at what Esarhaddon controls by the end of his reign, this dude is really kicking butt. Because again, he thinks that he can take over everything. So not only does he just take over Egypt, he took over part of Turkey, and he takes over part of northern Arabia. He moves over here into the regions which would today be part of Iran, but at the ancient times were Ecbatana was the capital of Media, down here in Susa. He just takes over tons of stuff, and this is when they take over Cyprus. Yeah, so not yet, but eventually. This is when they take over Cyprus. And yeah, this guy just has a ton of territory, right? Now, the whole time that he's doing this, he's still super paranoid, though. And there is this ritual that you can do as the king of Babylon. And this is a kind of a fascinating social outlet or cultural thing where you could elect what's called a replacement king. And this is sort of like going into witness protection. The flower might be a cardoon. Thank you, Shasta. Appreciate your help. And also, welcome to the chat. Hope you're doing well. So, if you were afraid that you might be axed, you could go through this ceremony where you would make a replacement king. And this would be for a period of 100 days. And you would usually pick somebody that was not ever likely to actually be able to rule. So you would pick somebody that was very deeply mentally disturbed, like they had what we might diagnose today with something like schizophrenia, or you would pick somebody that had a developmental disorder. So maybe something like you'd pick somebody that had like severe autism, or somebody that had maybe like Down syndrome. And you would choose these people who are never going to be able to rule by themselves, but you would make them king for 100 days, right? And while they were king, they ate the king's food, and they did all the stuff that the king would do. And the court people kind of ran what's going on in the background, but the king would go into hiding, and they even gave him a code name. So you didn't refer to the king like as Esarhaddon. You would refer to things like, I need to go see the farmer. And the king would live in isolation in a hidden like sub-palace thing outside of the city, in relative anonymity, so that you could maybe outlive the plot against you. And Esarhaddon did this a lot. Usually this was something that a king might do once, maybe, in their entire reign. This guy didn't make it an entire year before he took over the kingdom and established himself, and then like almost immediately said, I need a replacement king. And then by the time we get to like 670 or 672, 671, he did it again, and then he did it again. He spent 1 year, I think it's the year 671, according to the reckoning, where he was not king for most of the year, because he just kept making these replacement kings, right? Is that what Harry did? I don't think so. I think Harry, well, we're not getting into that. But basically, Esarhaddon is just super paranoid and freaked out. But He does rule Assyria at its territorial height, which is, again, a lot of territory. This guy is super duper powerful and has just an absolute ton of money, trade support, military power, economic power. It's just really, really cool. So this is the height of Assyria, and it all goes down from there. Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained? Is that not why you're here? What up, Aristotle and party? Welcome in. I'm fairly certain that most people know who I am if you're coming from Aristotle's channel. Janifest, thank you so much for the follow and welcome. If you don't know who I am, hello. My name is Shane. I teach anthropology and sociology and history at college, and on stream we hang out and we talk about history stuff. Usually. Sometimes we'll do other goofy things. I might go on a 2-hour rant about J.R.R. Tolkien or The Lord of the Rings, or I might get on stream and build a plastic giant robot model kit, which obviously I love dearly. But most of the time we're talking history. Welcome on in. Eris, how was your stream? It's good to see you, my friend. Thanks so much for the raid. If any of you are in the chat and are not following my friend Aristotle, you absolutely should. This guy has one of those big fancy PhDs in philosophy and knows a lot about the ancient world via studying mostly ancient Greek philosophy. He's a virtue ethicist, so he knows all about Aristotle. And he's just a cool guy who's very intelligent and spends a lot of time using that to try to make the world better, which is absolutely something that I appreciate because that's sort of what I also try to do. I didn't learn all of this stuff just for fun. I mean, I did, but I also like to try to use this to help people understand how things have gone in the past, right? So, Aristotle, hope everything is lovely in your world. We are in midterm week, and I have a 4-day weekend coming up for fall break, which is going to be super nice. Bribing you for PR was worth every penny. What's up, man? The world is better for having us. I appreciate that, Tuna. The world's better for having you too, man. Tuna's a great dude. I don't know how many of you all know Tuna in life, but he's a good guy. What's up, Sock Now? Good to see you. So tonight we're talking about Assyria, and we actually just wrapped up the material that I had planned. We went all the way through the rise of the Assyrian kingdom from their low state at the end of the Bronze Age collapse, and then through about 200-ish, 300 years of Assyrian dominance. We left off with this guy. I can show you a picture of this guy if you want to see him. This guy Esarhaddon here, who's here on this big stela, bragging about how he beat up the Egyptians. But this lovely hunk of man meat here is King Esarhaddon, the most historically powerful ruler of Assyria. What causes the collapse of Assyria? Internal stupidity, mostly, but also external pressure, most notably from resurgent Babylon, and then especially from ascendant Persia, specifically the combined might of the Medes and the Persians under a guy named Cyrus the Great, and the expansion of the super powerful Persian Empire that wipes out basically everybody in their path. There are VODs that talk about that, and I have loaded most of those already at the YouTube channel. Again, I am building all of the VOD stuff into YouTube channel playlists I think I have like 25-ish, 30-ish of Adventures in History sections on there. We're trying to fill in some gaps. I've got probably 20-ish of the viewer requests on there, and I just started adding the histories of Middle Earth on there. So the Parthians aren't going to really show up until about the 240s BC. So the Parthians are after the Medio-Persians. So the Medo-Persians are like Cyrus the Great, who is going to beat up the Babylonians. The Babylonians are going to cause a lot of trouble under this group of people called the Chaldeans, right? They're going to be a group of people that end up taking over the Babylonian throne. So the Chaldeans are people, if you know who Nebuchadnezzar is, one of these big, sort of very well-known ancient Babylonian kings. He's actually a Chaldean, and he's going to be responsible for taking a lot of Assyria over, but because of overexpansion of the Chaldeans, it's going to leave Babylon weak, and this is going to be where Cyrus shows up and beats all these people up. And Cyrus and his version of the Persians, his Persian version, is going to be wiped out by Alexander the Great in the 300s. So the Medo-Persians are going to run from about the late part of the 6th century, so like the 500s, the lower numbers of the 500s in the BC, through about the 300s. Alexander the Great is going to come through and wipe all of those people out in the 320s. Then you're going to have a series of people that are going to chunk up Alexander's territory, and the people that take over most of Persia is this particular group called the Seleucids, under Seleucus, one of his biggest and most powerful generals. The Seleucids are going to run for about 200-ish years, and they're going to start losing out territory to the Parthians, right? So that's sort of the timeline. And then the Parthians, of course, give way to the Sassanids, who are my favorite Persians, who then, of course, end up getting beaten by the Muslims, who are going to then take over everything under the Umayyad dynasty, who then fracture, and then you get multiple different dynasties that claim Persia, and you go all the way through history with this kind of stuff. I love history a lot. This is kind of my thing, right? So... if you pick a point in the world, I can probably tell you a lot about it. But this is what I study for a living, right? So it makes sense that I know about it. I think actually one of the next streams that we have to make up is a stream about the Diadochi, who are the people that take over after Alexander the Great's death. So we'll talk about Seleucus and all of the other people like Ptolemy and the kingdoms that are set up in Macedonia, stuff like that. So Saracen is a slang term that's made up by Europeans to sort of denigrate Muslim people. So I don't particularly like that, because Saracen isn't an ethnic group or a specific kingdom, or like there's no Saracen language. It's just a slang term that gets made up by especially late medieval and high medieval Europeans to basically classify all Muslim people that weren't being nice to the European Christians, right? So the first Arab expansion that comes out under Muhammad and the Rashidun Caliphate are actually Arab people. The Umayyad Caliphate is run by Arab people. The Abbasids are run by Arabs, but are going to become much more sort of polycultural. They're going to incorporate a lot of other elements like Persian elements and Syrian elements. Even later Umayyad dynasts are going to have a lot of influence from people that are converts from Syria. But then you actually have just straight up Persian Muslim dynasties, right? Just depends on where you are in time. So once Islam spreads, originally it's spreading under the expansion of the Arab people out of the Arabian Peninsula, but then as different people convert, of course you get like all these people from northern Africa, you get Libyans and Algerians and Berbers and all these different groups of people, Egyptians and Syrians, and you get Persians, and you get people from Central Asia, Uzbeks, and all these different people groups, right? Yeah, exactly, right? So once it gets out, it spreads pretty quick, especially over the course of that 6th century AD, 6th and 7th century AD. You get a lot of Muslim expansion. So, all right. Might I reiterate, I need to get a space mouse. Yeah, I'm probably not going to. I'm happy with the one that I have. I'm good. I'm good. I know it's a fancy little toy, but I don't need any more toys. I resist change, especially to new fancy technology, a lot more than people might think because of how techie I am. But I didn't get a smartphone until 2015, right? So I didn't get a phone that would use 4G until about 2019, right? Is it a toy for you, or is it a toy for us? See, that's the thing. I look at them as a toy. If you need it and you want to use it, that's cool for you. But to me, that would just be a toy. I have something like this is the mouse that I use here. And I think it's like maybe $15-$20. It's just a little crappy Logitech, but it does everything that I need it to do and runs on batteries that I can recharge. So I'm a pretty simple kind of guy when it comes to tech stuff. This is also why I don't have a graphics card that was produced this century. Or not this century, this decade, right? Because I use what I've got until it falls apart. I don't actually know what I would do with a trowel. I don't need people to like donate funds for me to get a fancy mouse. If you wanted to donate funds, there are other things that are much more utile for me, right, than just a fancy mouse. Something like the hot water heater in my house that I might have to repair here in just a bit, which I'm not necessarily looking forward to. I have way too many Gundam kits right now that I have not finished or even started, so I don't need Gundam kits at the moment. Time travel hat. I have a future hat, and I've got an opinion hat and an adventure hat, but if there is actually a hat that would allow me to time travel, I don't think I would even use it. It's way too easy to screw up time travel and to create paradoxes and end up screwing up things pretty badly unintentionally. I think that's the story of most time travel. Humans think we know better, but we don't, and then we screw it all up. So, tends to be the way that it works. All right. Does anybody have any last minute questions or any points that you want to redeem or anything like that? Because otherwise, I think we are going to go find somebody to raid. Somebody to raid. Matt, I think the puppy actually just went outside. Let me double check that. But I just heard my wife open the door, so the puppy might be outside using the bathroom. But let me check. She's inside, by the way. I don't know if you heard the wooing. But she is indeed here. So let me move over to the puppy cam. Hey, come over here. Come over here. There's the puppy. What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? Hello. Where are you going? Hey, come back here. The people want to see you. Come here. Come and see me. Hey, come here. What are you doing? You big booger. Oh, yes. Oh, yes, this is the puppy. Hello. You want to look right here? Look right here. Hey, look right here. What are you doing? Did you have to go outside and go potty? No? Just waggle. I love, this is the derpiest tail ever. She's only got like 3/4 of a tail. That's the puppy. So there was the puppy of war. She is a mess. She wants to go play with my wife, and she wanted to play with me. That's why she was barking at me to get out of the chair. But as soon as she figured out that I wasn't going to get out of the chair, then she's like, well, then forget you, big human. So Kyle has asked for a redemption of the standard question book, which I think might be Kyle's favorite redemption. And this is okay, by the way. I'm not criticizing. I'm just saying, like, this is one of Kyle's favorites. So if you have not been here before, the standard question book and home study outlines is a now 106-year-old book. No, 107-year-old book that was originally meant to go along with a college home study course. And this is your study guide. I don't have the study materials. It's just a book full of questions. So what we do is we just turn to a random page, like this one here in the middle, and then I just sort of point to one of these questions, like, say, that one, and then I read the question, and if I can answer it, I can answer it, and if I don't, I don't. When did Europeans begin to land in Japan? And during what year were all foreigners except Dutch and Chinese banished from Japan? Okay, so when did the Europeans begin to land in Japan? This was in the early 1500s, when the Portuguese and Dutch first started showing up in Japan in an attempt to open Japan to trade. And the Portuguese were somewhat successful, except for they also brought the Catholic Church with them, and that caused a bit of a stir as the Catholic Church began to expand in Japan, and that started causing a lot of people to sour on it, because the Japanese leadership at this time period was not really super happy with all of that stuff happening. So when this particular situation started happening, by the time we get to the year 1600, there is a really big war, and this guy named Ieyasu Tokugawa takes over, and he soon after becomes shogun. And then it's his grandson, this guy named Iemitsu Tokugawa, that is going to basically ban everybody except for the Dutch and the Chinese from Japan. And this is in response to a Christian revolt at a place called Shimabara, which is in 1632. And Shimabara was a really fascinating revolution. There was a little kid who claimed that he was a reincarnation of Jesus, and a bunch of Christians took a fort in Shimabara and ended up leading a fairly successful rebellion for a couple of years against Iemitsu Tokugawa. He did not care for that very much at all. And one of the biggest reasons the Dutch got to stay is because he commanded the Dutch to blow up the fort with the cannons on their ships, which they did. And at that point, he was just like, you know what? We don't really want outsiders anymore. The Dutch can stay because through this really interesting mechanism, the Dutch actually had to swear fealty to the Tokugawa shoguns. This is very specific, but when the Tokugawa were making deals with Europeans like the Portuguese, well, the Portuguese had a king. And the shoguns felt okay making deals with a king. And the English had a king or a queen. And they were okay making deals with heads of state like that. But the Dutch didn't have a king. They had basically a title, this position called landsholder, because the Dutch were a republic and they elected their leaders. And the landsholder had sent letters to the Tokugawa shogunate acting like they were a king, but the Tokugawa figured out that the Dutch didn't have a king. And when the Dutch didn't have a king, that meant that they were subservient to him. So the only reason that the Dutch got to stay was he literally made members of the Dutch Asia corporations that were trading over in Asia swear fealty to him like he was their lord. Here we come in with Noble Crumpet. Noble Crumpet, what is up? Welcome in. I hope you are entertained. Thank you so much for the raid. Hello to everybody from Crumpet's stream. And if you are not following my friend Noble Crumpet, who is an artist, a gamer, and a tabletop RPG runner, you totally should, because if you like to watch art or games or tabletop RPGs, this is the place to go. Crumpet is a very entertaining individual, and you will not regret your time hanging out there. Hello, everybody. Yeah, Crumpet, we are certainly just kind of like, are currently just kind of wrapping everything up. I got asked a question from the standard question book, and because this is sort of up my alley, I have tangented way off course, but that's okay. That's kind of my thing. The question was about Japan closing itself off to foreign travel, and I've gotten into this whole thing about how the Dutch had to swear fealty to the Tokugawa, right? I love me some history, right? In my learned opinion, who was the first weeb? I actually have an opinion on this. Let me make sure that I'm spelling his name the right way. Is it Mitford or Midford? It's Mitford. A.B. Mitford. This guy was a British military attaché that got stationed in Japan and absolutely fell in love with their culture and decided that one of the things that he needed to do was organize collections of their folklore and historical stories. And he has published several books, and this was back in like the 1870s, by the way, so it's not like he's alive now. But he published a very famous book that I love deeply, called Tales of Old Japan. That is a fascinating collection of Japanese culture and history and ghost stories and folklore and yokai stuff. A really, really great book. You can find those on Amazon for 10 or 15 bucks. Definitely worth checking out if you want to read some old Japanese stuff. He was totally the first weeb, in my opinion. Related question, how did foreigners regain access to Japan? With the same cannons that they used to block everything else. Well, not Tom Cruise. Through the Meiji Restoration. In the 1860s, foreign powers aligned themselves with the emperors against the Tokugawa and gave the imperial forces and the supporters of the emperors Western guns and technology and cannons, and were able to lead a coup where the emperors ran the Tokugawa shoguns out. And at that point, the emperor reassumed command of the government and opened trade to foreign countries like Britain, United States, Russia, etc. We've done a stream on that, a viewer request stream on that. I can't remember exactly which one it is, but we've done a viewer request stream on the Meiji Restoration. Yeah, no problem. Again, I love rambling about history. This is kind of my thing, and I've never found a history that I hate. So I will be happy to ramble about so many things. So many things. Okay. I do think I need to shut up, though, because I do still have to teach 3 hours tomorrow, and I can feel kind of a tickle. I've already taught 3 hours today, and we've been streaming now for, wow, 2 hours and 15 minutes. Well, the VOD's still there, Kyle. I haven't loaded that one to YouTube yet, but I know that the VOD does exist. Or at least as far as I know it exists. Alright, so let's go try to find somebody to raid so that we can show some love to some friends. Yeah, I tend to drink a lot of water, but at the moment I'm just sort of like, eh. It's kind of scratchy. Let's go raid cat videos. We have not raided cat videos in a heck of a long time because cat videos is not streaming as much as she used to. But cat videos is a delightful artist that whistles like birds and does a lot of traditional art stuff and is just delightful to speak to. So let us go raid cat videos. And when we get there, let us yell adventure. Hit the button here to start raid. So let me say thanks to everybody. So we got new friends today with Don Does Math raiding in, and we got some followers from that. So welcome everybody that's new. We also got a raid from Aristotle. We got a raid from Noble Crumpet. All these cool people coming in, bringing eyeballs in my direction. It is greatly appreciated. Thank you to all of my subscribers that support the channel through Twitch subscriptions. But let me also thank other people that support me in other ways. You can see that I have a Patreon, and it is basically just set up to be an alternate way to subscribe to the channel if you don't want to give Jeff Bezos money. It is cheaper than the current Amazon subscription, and I get more money of that. And you can also see that you can, if you so desire, send me a book. And I did the wrong command. But thank you to everybody that has sent me books to further my academic study. And thanks to everybody that hangs out, regardless of who you are. If you're just hanging out lurking, I still appreciate you being here as well, because those numbers push me up higher and bring more eyeballs in this direction. So thanks to everybody, and I hope that you have a good one, and I hope that I get to see you sometime over the weekend. So I hope you have a good one, and I'll see you next time.